What's up, people? I was gonna record the 14th episode of Talk and Draw today, but because I kind of, enjoyed the video that I made the other day where I was kind of just talking on camera, I figured let's get started with the story time. If you stuck around for that previous video that I made just the other day, I was talking about my old workspace, the office job that I had last year for 6 months, and all of the racism and things that rubbed me the wrong way within it. I kind of wanted to go into detail with that. This isn't going to be like a streamlined story time, more like a compilation of separate events that happened over the course of the 6 months I was there. So let's get into it, because I got some pretty interesting stuff. Out of the slight bit of respect I have for the people I'll be mentioning within these stories, I'm going to keep everyone's name under wraps, so they don't have to worry about being exposed, and I don't have to worry about them being upset, falling back on me. It's times like this I wish I really didn't care, so that way I could just, expel everything, tell everything, but unfortunately I care. This first instance that I'll be talking about took place, I want to say, at least probably 2 to 3 weeks into my training there. I wasn't directly in the office within the first few days of my job there. They had me in a separate building in which I was completing this online training, and I was kind of separate from everything that was going on in the workplace, so I wasn't really interacting with people too much. But fast forward a week later, when that was all done, and I was ready to, start hopping on the phones, because that's what I was doing. I was answering calls. I met one of the people who works at the very front of the office, pretty far from where my desk was initially. And I took a liking to her. She was pretty cool. Not to mention, she was very fine, in my opinion. She was looking good. One of the things that I learned about her at the start of, us talking is that she's like a really big bookworm. She's into reading all different types of genres, but mainly the freaky shit. And something I like to do just to make the office culture, more entertaining, because I felt like a lot of the conversations that people had in the office more often than not were like very boring, to be honest. And so I like to spice it up with like some pretty interesting questions. And one of the questions that I asked was, if you could go back in time to change any event, what would you do and what time would you go to, And as I was asking everybody around the office this, she so happened to come up near my desk, in which I was sitting next to my manager and two of my other coworkers who were sitting like adjacent from me, basically. Boy, her answer was wild. This woman says to me, I would go back to the 1700s. My initial thoughts are like, okay, that's interesting. Why? I asked everybody why they would go back to said time, just so they could elaborate a bit more on what it is that they wanted to do with this time travel ability. She says, I would go back to a plantation to save a slave. And I was like, okay, that's interesting. Some people might say noble, even, to like rescue a slave from a plantation at the time. That's high treason in like super white supremacist culture at the time. That's pretty interesting. For what reason though? Like, why are you doing that? Because for some reason, something in the back of my mind told me like, that's not out of the goodness of your heart. You have ulterior motives. Now, without saying that, of course, I just asked her, okay, like, why? Like, what would be your purpose in doing that? And she was like, are you kidding me? Like, what if he was like super grateful and he was like super fine and like we fell in love and had like mixed babies? I'm like, so you fetishize black men. Okay. Yeah. And, after taking note of that, I probably should have been, a bigger, better, more cautious person. But like I said, she was fine as fuck. Listen, I didn't give it a pass. You feel me? I was like, you're crazy for that. I literally told her, I was like, that's wild. I don't know how I feel about that answer. And she was like, whatever. Walks away. And, that was basically the end of that little conversation, that event. But that tipped me off to let me know, like, all right, this place is gonna be something. Next thing we have to talk about, so the company that I was working for had people that didn't work in the office. They would get sent out on like missions, in trucks to go do things at people's houses. I'm trying not to be very specific as to keep shit under wraps. The technicians, they're technicians. One of them specifically, I want to name him because I don't fuck with this guy, but I'm not gonna do it because, again, respect. You feel me? Respect. Someone fuck. So it's my first week in the office and I'm still getting introduced to everybody, right? And this technician specifically, like a lot of them did, they would like to come sit in the office and, just chat it up with, it was mostly women in the office. They would, chat it up with the girls in there. And it was like, okay, cool. Everybody has like their own camaraderie going. They've clearly been here for some years and they've got like a repertoire built. But this guy was also a bit new. He joined on to the team just a little bit before I did. And he was already familiar with everybody, and I was the only person in the office he hadn't met yet. And I was sitting right at the front, and from where my desk was, there was a door, like, essentially right behind me, where anybody coming in could see me, and, like, they pinpoint, that's
a black guy.
Like, you look at me. Come on. Now, I don't say that to be, like, token black person in the office, but low-key, that's really what I was. And they kind of treated me as such. This dude specifically, though, upon our first interaction, he was like, it's nice to see that we have a brother in the office. Keep in mind, this man is not black. Farthest thing from it, actually. Farthest thing from it. I, as a black person who's grown up around a lot of non-black people, it's not uncommon for me to have interactions like this. So I wasn't thinking to myself like, oh, hey, that was a weird comment and wanted to brush the dude aside completely. Like, that's not my initial instinct because, like, that's how a lot of people interact with me. And it's like, even though it's annoying and disrespectful and so many other things, it just doesn't tip me off in a way, I guess, that it should. Until much later events, because I will be telling 2 separate events about this person. So after he said that or whatever, I just laughed it off, like, okay, you're weird. White guy saying like, oh, nice to have a brother in the office. You're trying to like relate or, build some type of camaraderie with me. I think that's a weird way to do it by using terms that other black people would use to address me, but your cup of tea. You feel me? You talk how you want. You're a grown man. I'm a grown man. Let's just have that respect here, let's not cross any lines. And so I laugh it off. We introduce ourselves. I shake his hand. One of my other coworkers is like, oh yeah, he's going to be dispatching. And I was like, what does that mean? Because I didn't know at the time, right? Dispatching in the position that I was in entailed being very hands-on and talking to the technicians a lot of the time. And it's something that I mainly did on the weekends because of my school schedule at the time. I wasn't working like a full 5 days a week, and I had a Saturday shift. And on that Saturday shift, I would be interacting with the technicians a lot. He would be one of them, of course. Expressed his excitement about how good it would be to have a black man in charge. I looked at him a little weird after he said that, of course. I didn't really laugh at that as I did the, nice to have a brother in the office type of comment, because to me, that you're weird for that. You're very strange for that, and I still think you're weird for that. Anyway, let's move forward. On to the next. I wasn't certain that I was going to get this job when I went in for the interview, given that the cards were kind of stacked up in my favor because my boss from the restaurant was actually cool with some of the people that worked in the office, and they also played a part in me being able to get the job, which again, I'm grateful for the opportunity to have had this experience despite the negativity, racism, and bullshit that it entailed. But the main reason I wasn't sure that I was going to get the job is because when I interviewed, my manager, or the woman who eventually became my manager once I did get the position, she seemed very fond of me and was like impressed with what I had to say and thought that I had like a good talking voice for like customer service over the phone. Cool. The guy, her supervisor who was in the office at the time that I was interviewing, did not seem so keen about having me as a part of the team. I kind of sensed that. It was the looks that he was giving with some of the responses that I had to the questions that they would ask me during the interview. And I didn't really think too much of it at the time, but I was like, that definitely could play a part in me possibly not getting the job if he has any say over it. Come to find out, it was entirely my manager's say, and because she wanted me on the team, I got the job. So I got hired. But what I was told, she asked him, my manager asked her supervisor if I'm somebody that, he would want to hire. And then he said to her, if that's what you want. I'm known to be a bit dramatic, so maybe I could be looking into that too much. But if I say to somebody, if that's what you want, that's me saying you're making the decision, not me. Because if it was up to me, I'm not choosing that path. Is that just me? Anyway, I have two interactions that happened with this dude. One of them is because he thought that me and my friend who was training me on the Saturday shifts at the time were like messing around, and so he called us into the office, and there was this whole like situation where he basically told us, you know, just like take it seriously. And then I ended up doing Saturdays by myself instead of having someone there to help me. Not off to a good start automatically. One, it didn't seem like he wanted me in the job. Two, his first like real conversation with me is like scolding me essentially. And then we have the shit I'm about to talk about now. So there was actually a lot of pretty unfortunate happenings during my time there. We had one of the technicians pass away. Rest in peace to him. There was a funeral that a lot of the people on the team were attending, other technicians included, of course. And one of them came into the office and didn't know how to tie his tie. The supervisor, who I've mentioned multiple times at this point, was asking everybody around the office if they knew how to tie a tie, you know, so he could be looking right for the funeral and then they could go on their way. Now, me, being who I am, trying to be helpful all the time, maybe to a detriment, I was like, yeah, I know how to tie a tie. Kind of. Somewhat. So, after I say I know how to tie a tie, and he's standing there at the door that I mentioned previously that's like behind me at my desk, he says, "Get over here, boy." What? I'm telling you, like, looking back on this shit, I really let too much slide just to keep this fucking job. I could have gone back to the restaurant at any time. I could have gone back at any time. But I was like, you know what? I'm getting paid good here. I get to talk more. I get to do a lot of things at this job that I didn't get to do at the restaurant. So let me try to make the most of these. So let me try to make the most out of this opportunity. I don't laugh it off. I look at him sternly before I get up out of my chair, but I still go do it. I go over there. I don't know how to tie, as I'm sure you could tell by the apprehension in my voice when I was explaining it just a second ago. And he's like, okay, well, you tricked us. Let's go find somebody else. We move on with our day. Now, the problem with this is an old white man. When an old white man calls a young black man boy, that can only mean two things. You come from the South, or you're racist. I'm a grown man. What do you mean, boy? So with that being said, that makes three little weird, racist office culture interactions I've had so far. Now let's move on to the last one. I mentioned this in my previous video. It's something that took place during my last week working there, and it, believe it or not, involves the guy, the technician that I mentioned earlier in this video. Yeah, it's time for round two. You ready? Okay, let's talk about it. So at this point in the job, you know, it's 6 months later. I had built a pretty good, I'd say like work relationship with everybody for the most part, and I had gotten really close with one of my coworkers who was sitting directly next to me at the time. The desk was empty initially, but then she came in probably I want to say a month after I did, and you know, we were pretty cool. And she started taking on the responsibility when the other dispatchers were out of picking up the phone for the technicians, you know, like answering their calls and checking on them, seeing what they need, this, that, and the other, whatever, work bullshit. Now, one of the times she so happened to be on the phone with the technician that we are talking about in this instance. And she caught somewhat of an attitude with him because he was a smartass. He was being a smartass, and so she decided to be a smartass back. And then he says to her, "Don't put that timbre in your voice when you talk to me." And she was like, "What does timbre mean?" Hangs up the phone. That's the end of the conversation. I think that's the end of it. You know, I'm kind of just over there laughing because I hear their conversation because they're talking pretty loud over the phone, and it's rather slow at the time. So like, I'm not really doing my job. Honestly, I'm kind of just like chilling there at the desk. Fast forward to the end of the day, the technician and one of his other technician friends come into the office, and so they start talking to my coworker who's sitting directly next to me, and she was asked him, you know, like, what does timbre mean? You know, that word that you said on the phone earlier. What does that mean? I've never heard that before. And then he looks at her and he's like, "You don't know what timbre means?" And then he looks at me after she says no, and he's like, "Do you know what timbre means? You gotta know what it means." I was like, "Why would I know what it means? What does it mean?" And he goes, in a black accent, "Come on, man, you black." I got so fucking serious. I looked at this nigga dead in his eyes. I can't even recreate the expression because like I can't naturally emit that kind of anger that boiled up in me. Like I despise when people tell me that I should know something or I should do something or be a certain way because I'm black. I am a person with different experiences, just like you. You feel me? None of that shit applies because of my skin color. So as I'm looking at him infuriated, making hard eye contact and in a very stern tone and deep voice that I didn't even know I had within me, I asked this nigga, I was like, oh, so because I'm black, I'm supposed to know what that means. Everybody in the office got quiet because they could clearly see that I was upset. Now, it took a lot of willpower for me not to get up out of my seat and sock this nigga in the face just for saying that shit. Because I knew you were ignorant, but to say some shit like that, no, you taking it too far. I probably still had like an hour and a half left in the day, and because I felt myself boiling and he was trying to catch himself after that, he was like, oh no man, I didn't mean anything by that. Just that, you know, like when you're like artistic, because I had showed him my art before, you usually know what like timbre means, because it's like, you know, this, that, and the other, like musically gifted people understand. And I'm like, I don't even do music, nigga, what are you talking about? And I was so upset, I left early. And I didn't come to work the day after that either, because I had one more day left and it was going to be a Friday and I was going to, you know, just vibe out. But even that didn't go as planned because there was some bullshit happening on the phones. So it was like, I just couldn't have a good last week there. It was a terrible send off, to be honest. But then we had a little bowling get together and then that was a little bit fun. And we're not going to talk about that. I tell this story really to, I guess, remind myself and also to share with others my experience in a predominantly white area working in an office space as a black man. It was demeaning. It was demeaning. And while a lot of people did, you know, respect me for how I carried myself and how I dressed and how I spoke and all of the things that white people like to give you points on when they're not, you know, certain that you're an intelligent individual, I received those accolades. But it doesn't come without the bullshit. It doesn't come without the bullshit. So always beware when you're working in an office space as a brown person. That's all I want to say. Thank you for watching the video. If you made it this far, be sure to drop a like and subscribe. You know, I'll be telling more stories. I also got some different type of content coming out pretty soon. Stay tuned for that. Anyway, peace out.